The goodbye nobody was ready for. Russell Westbrook just walked away from the NBA, and somehow the silence around his exit hit harder than any farewell tour could. No season-long celebration, no final game built around him, no dramatic goodbye at center court, just one video, one message. And suddenly an entire generation realized they may have already watched the last game of one of the most explosive guards the league has ever seen. Within minutes, reactions poured in. Trae Young called it a hell of a career. Donovan Mitchell kept it simple. Thank you, James Harden. Former teammates, executives, and players from different generations all began paying respect to a man who spent nearly 2 decades attacking every possession like it was personal. But here's what makes this retirement feel different. Westbrook was not simply disappearing because nobody wanted him anymore. According to the story surrounding his decision, teams still had interest. He still had a path to keep playing. Yet after 18 seasons, 9 All-Star selections, an MVP award, and more triple-doubles than anyone in NBA history, he decided the race was over. This feels less like a normal retirement and more like the closing of an era. Westbrook was never a normal player. He was speed, emotion, stubbornness, loyalty, brilliant, criticism, and unforgettable theater packed into one body. Some fans loved him, others questioned his efficiency, some blamed him for playoff failures, but almost nobody could ignore him. And now the NBA has to answer a bigger question. Did people truly appreciate Russell Westbrook before it was too late? Before we go back to Oklahoma City, the Durant years, the Harden trade, and the MVP season, that changed everything. Tell me where you're watching from. If you believe Westbrook deserves to be remembered as one of the most unique superstars of his generation, come on. If you think his legacy is more complicated, come on, dude. And subscribe to the channel, because this story is only getting started. When Oklahoma City found its identity, long before Russell Westbrook became Mr. Triple-Double, before the MVP trophy, before the arguments about his efficiency, and before number 0 became inseparable from Oklahoma City basketball. He was simply a young guard entering the NBA with something to prove. Westbrook was selected 4th overall in the 2008 NBA draft by the Seattle Supersonics. But before he could ever establish himself in Seattle, the franchise relocated to Oklahoma City. Suddenly, a young player trying to find his place in the league was becoming part of something much bigger. The birth of an entirely new NBA identity. Oklahoma City did not have generations of NBA memories to fall back on. There were no decades of banners, legendary rivalry, or franchise icons hanging over this young roster. The city was hungry for somebody to believe in, and Westbrook arrived at exactly the right moment. He was not alone. Kevin Durant was already emerging as a devastating scorer, and soon James Harden would join them. But Westbrook brought something different. He played with an edge that made every possession feel urgent. He attacked the rim as if somebody had personally challenged him. He rebounded like a forward, pushed the ball like a running back, and competed with an intensity that sometimes looked completely uncontrollable. That intensity became his identity, and slowly, it became part of Oklahoma City's identity too. The Thunder went from a young rebuilding team to one of the most exciting groups in basketball, far faster than anyone expected. Westbrook was not simply joining an established contender, he was helping create one. That distinction matters when people discuss his legacy today, because Oklahoma City did not fall in love with Westbrook only because of the numbers. The relationship started before the triple-doubles, before the awards. Before the record books, fans watched him grow alongside the franchise itself, and then something almost impossible happened. Oklahoma City somehow placed 3 future MVPs on the same young roster. For a moment, it looked like the NBA's next dynasty had already arrived. Nobody knew how quickly it would disappear. 3 future MVPs and the dynasty that never happened. Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, James Harden. Looking back now, the names almost sound fictional together. 3 players who would eventually become NBA MVPs were sharing the same locker room while still in their early 20s. Durant provided effortless scoring. Westbrook supplied explosive pressure and relentless energy. Harden became the devastating third weapon who could control the second unit and close games. For a young franchise, it was almost unfair. By 2012, Oklahoma City had reached the NBA final. Think about how quickly that happened. Westbrook had entered the league only 4 years earlier, yet the Thunder were already battling LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh, and the Miami Heat for a championship. They lost but the loss did not feel like an ending. It felt like the beginning. Most people assumed Oklahoma City would return again and again. Durant was still young. Westbrook was still improving. Harden had barely scratched the surface of what he could become. Then came the decision that changed everything. Harden was traded to Houston. What looked like a roster and financial decision at the time became one of the greatest what-if moments in modern NBA history. Harden transformed from Oklahoma City's sixth man into a superstar and eventually an MVP. Suddenly, the three-headed monster became two, but Durant and Westbrook were still good enough to keep championship expectations alive. That is what makes the story painful. The Thunder did not collapse because they lacked talent. They had more future individual greatness in one locker room than most franchises discover across decades. They simply could not keep it together long enough, and the further Harden's career exploded in Houston, the more impossible it became not to wonder what Oklahoma City had lost. Could Durant, Westbrook, and Harden have become a dynasty? Could they have won multiple championships? Could they have changed the balance of the entire league? Nobody can answer those questions now. What we do know is that Harden's departure was only the first fracture. The second one would hurt Oklahoma City even, because 4 years later, Westbrook would watch another MVP caliber teammate walk away, and this time, the destination made everything personal. Durant left, Westbrook stayed. The 2016 Western Conference Finals gave Oklahoma City a glimpse of everything it wanted. The Thunder had Golden State in trouble. They stood one series away from returning to the NBA Final, holding a commanding advantage against a Warriors team that had won 73 regular season games. Then the series slipped away. Golden State survived. Oklahoma City went home, and what happened next changed the emotional history of the franchise forever. Kevin Durant left the Thunder and joined the Warriors. For Oklahoma City fans, losing Durant was painful enough. Watching him join the team that had just eliminated the Thunder made the decision feel even heavier. Suddenly, Russell Westbrook stood alone. Harden was already gone. Durant was gone. The championship core that once appeared destined to dominate the decade had disappeared around him. Westbrook had options. He could have looked around the league and decided Oklahoma City no longer gave him the easiest road toward a championship. He could have pushed for a different situation. He could have followed the superstar movement toward another contender. Instead, he stayed. That decision became one of the defining moments of his relationship with Oklahoma City. Westbrook signed an extension and publicly committed himself to the franchise at perhaps its most vulnerable point. To some people, it was simply a contract. To Thunder fans, it meant something much deeper. Their superstar had watched two future MVP teammates leave, and instead of treating Oklahoma City like a temporary stop, he chose to carry the weight himself. That choice also created enormous pressure. There was nowhere left to hide. Every win would belong to Westbrook. Every loss would be attached to him. Every shot, turnover, triple-double, and late-game decision would become part of a debate about whether one player could really carry that much responsibility, and Westbrook responded in the only way he knew how. He attacked possession after possession, night after night. What followed was not merely the best statistical season of his career. It became one of the strangest, most emotional, and most historically overwhelming individual seasons basketball had ever seen. Russell Westbrook was about to turn heartbreak into numbers nobody thought were possible anymore. The season Westbrook broke basketball. There are great seasons, there are MVP seasons, and then there are seasons that force people to reconsider what they believed could happen on a basketball court. Russell Westbrook's 2016-17 campaign belonged in that final category. With Kevin Durant gone and Oklahoma City's identity suddenly resting on his shoulders, Westbrook played as if slowing down would allow everything around him to collapse. He averaged 31, 6 points, 7 rebounds, and 4 assists per game, a triple-double for an entire season. Before Westbrook, no player had averaged one across a full NBA season since Oscar Robertson in the early 1960s. For decades, Robertson's achievement had felt like one of those records belonging to another version of basketball. Westbrook brought it back to life. Then he went further. He recorded 42 triple-doubles, breaking Robertson's long-standing single-season record of 41, but statistics alone cannot explain why that season became so emotional. Every rebound seemed urgent. Every transition attack felt violent. Every late-game possession carried the energy of somebody refusing to let Oklahoma City become irrelevant after Durant's departure. Westbrook was not playing calm basketball. He was playing desperate basketball, and somehow the desperation became greatness. His postseason performance against Houston produced another unforgettable moment: 51 points, 13 assists, and 10 rebounds against a Rockets team led by James Harden. His former Oklahoma City teammate, the symbolism was impossible to miss two members of the Thunder's broken young core, now leading different franchises, colliding. While Westbrook attempted to carry an enormous burden by himself, the Thunder did not make a championship run, but Westbrook won the 2017 MVP award, and the season permanently altered his place in NBA history. It also created the argument that would follow him for the rest of his career. To his supporters, Westbrook had just produced evidence of extraordinary competitive greatness. To his critics, all those numbers still race. Another question: how much should historic individual production matter if it does not ultimately produce a championship? That debate never disappeared. And as Westbrook moved deeper into his career, it became louder than ever. The price of playing like Russell Westbrook. Russell Westbrook's greatest strength was also the reason he became one of the most debated superstars of his generation. He never played cautiously. That made him unforgettable. It also made him easy to criticize. For years, fans and analysts argued over the same questions. Was the triple-double obsession proof of unprecedented versatility, or did the numbers sometimes distract from efficiency? Did Westbrook's aggression create winning basketball, or did his shot selection occasionally work against his own team? Could a player who operated with that much emotion remain under control when the postseason demanded precision? There was evidence for both sides. That is why the argument lasted so long. Westbrook could take over a game with speed, rebounding, and playmaking in a way almost no point guard ever had. He could turn a defensive rebound into pressure at the opposite rim before the defense understood what happened. But the same player could also force difficult possessions, miss jumpers, and make decisions that frustrated viewers. The easiest version of Westbrook's story would be to choose one side: hero or problem, legend or disappointment. But his career was never that simple. The more interesting truth is that Westbrook refused to become a safer version of himself just because basketball culture increasingly valued efficiency, spacing, and controlled decision-making. He played like Russell Westbrook until there was almost nothing left to give. That stubbornness cost him at times. It also produced the moments people are still discussing years later, and eventually, basketball gave him a different challenge: not another scoring title, not another MVP race, not another chance to average a triple-double. Westbrook would have to confront something much more difficult for a former superstar: irrelevance. His role would shrink, teams would change, younger stars would replace him, the ball would not always belong in his hand. For many former MVPs, that transition can become ugly. Pride becomes resentment. Reduced minutes become controversy. The player spends his final years fighting against what time has already decided. Westbrook's late career created an unexpected counterargument to that stereotype, because eventually, the man famous for refusing to slow down learned how to step back, and that may have earned him more respect inside NBA locker rooms than another triple-double ever could. Shai took the throne, but never erased Russ. Every franchise eventually faces the same uncomfortable truth. No matter how important a superstar becomes, somebody else will eventually wear the jersey, take the shots, and build the next era. For Oklahoma City, that next era became centered around Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Westbrook's departure was part of a massive Thunder reset. The organization moved away from the team built around Russ and Paul George, collected assets, and began constructing something new. And as Shai's role grew, comparisons became unavoidable. He was now becoming the face of the same franchise Westbrook had once carried, but the two stars could hardly look more different. Westbrook's game was explosive chaos. Shai's approach appeared smoother and more controlled. Russ attacked with visible emotion. Shai often made difficult scoring look almost casual. Different personalities, different styles, same city. Early on, Gilgeous-Alexander made it clear he was not trying to become another Russell Westbrook. He wanted to become himself. Years later, however, his comments about Westbrook carried unmistakable respect. Shai described him as one of the best competitors to play the game and spoke positively about the man away from basketball as well. That matters because sports fans love creating rivalries between generations that the players themselves may not feel. Shai chasing franchise marks once associated with Westbrook does not automatically erase Russ. In many ways, it strengthens his legacy. The next Thunder superstar did not need to imitate the previous one. Westbrook had already helped prove that Oklahoma City could become a genuine destination for superstar-level basketball. Now, another player could write his own chapter, and that creates one of the most fascinating parts of Westbrook's retirement story. The franchise kept moving, the records kept changing. A new superstar took control, yet when Westbrook finally stepped away from basketball, Oklahoma City still reacted as if part of its own history had retired with him. Fans began talking again about number 0, about the rafters, about whether he deserved a statue, because replacing a superstar on the floor is possible. Replacing what he meant to a city is much harder, from MVP to role player. The most revealing years of Russell Westbrook's career may not have been the years when he was putting up impossible numbers. They may have been the years when the numbers disappeared. Westbrook's later career became a constant adjustment, different team, different system, different expectation. The Lakers, the Clippers, Denver, Sacramento. The player who once controlled nearly every possession was suddenly being asked to fit alongside other stars, accept fewer opportunities, and sometimes change roles completely. That can be brutal for a former MVP. When you have spent years being the center of an offense, accepting that the basketball world no longer revolves around you requires something statistics cannot measure, Westbrook eventually showed he could do it during his Clippers tenure after James Harden arrived. Westbrook moved into a bench role as Los Angeles attempted to stabilize its rotations. Think about the history behind that moment. 2 former Oklahoma City teammates, 2 future MVPs, 2 players who had both spent years dominating the ball, and now Westbrook was willing to sacrifice his starting role in an attempt to make the team function better. That did not erase every basketball problem, but it challenged the idea that Westbrook cared only about his own statistics, even late in his career. Flashes of the old force remained against Phoenix in the 2023 playoffs. With the Clippers dealing with major absences, Westbrook produced 23, 6 points, 6 rebounds, and 7 assists per game across the series, including a 3-7-point performance. The explosion was still hiding inside him. It simply appeared less often by his final stage. The story was no longer about whether Westbrook could average another triple-double. It was about whether one of the most intense stars of his generation could adapt. When basketball stopped treating him like a superstar, he did. That is why his retirement created more than nostalgia. Players understood what fans sometimes missed. They had watched Westbrook go from MVP to veteran, from franchise centerpiece to supporting piece, while continuing to compete. And when he finally decided he had given enough, the respect arrived from everywhere. The farewell he never got. That is what made Russell Westbrook's retirement announcement feel so strange. For most legends, fans know the goodbye is coming. There is a final season. Road crowds stand and applaud. Former teammates appear courtside. Every arena becomes part of a slow celebration. Westbrook did not get that version. There was no long countdown, no carefully scripted farewell tour. His announcement arrived, and suddenly everybody had to process the possibility that the final Russell Westbrook NBA game had already happened. That feeling explains why the reactions became so emotional. Trae Young acknowledged the career. Donovan Mitchell offered his thanks. James Harden's connection carried the weight of those unforgettable Oklahoma City years. Sam Presti, the executive who drafted Westbrook, reflected on the competitor who helped define the Thunder. And Kendrick Perkins pushed the conversation even further, arguing publicly that Oklahoma City should eventually honor Westbrook with his number 0 in the rafters and even a statue. Those ideas are about more than statistics. They are about ownership of memory. Westbrook's Oklahoma City resume already contains MVP honor, historic triple-doubles, and years of production. But the reason fans want a permanent symbol inside the arena is emotional. He stayed when leaving. Would have been understandable. He helped the franchise grow up. He gave the city some of the wildest basketball it had ever seen. And even when his career carried him through other franchises, Oklahoma City remained the place most closely attached to his identity. That is why some fans wished he could have returned for one final season. Not because the Thunder needed the old version of Russell Westbrook. That player was already gone. They wanted the chance to say goodbye properly. Instead, the goodbye happened through screen, posts, and memories. Maybe that is why the response became so powerful. The league was not only reacting to retirement, it was trying to create the farewell that Westbrook never scheduled for himself. And underneath all of those tributes sat one final question. When the emotion fades and the highlights become history, where should Russell Westbrook actually rank? That answer depends on what you believe greatness is supposed to mean. What Russell Westbrook really left behind. Russell Westbrook's legacy will never fit cleanly into one statistic, one argument, or one championship debate. That may be the most appropriate ending possible. If greatness is measured only by rings, critics will always find a reason to move him down the list. He never won the championship that Oklahoma City once appeared destined to capture. The Thunder's 3 future MVPs separated before discovering how far they could truly go together. If greatness is measured by individual production, the conversation changes immediately. On MVP, 9 All-Star selection, a season averaging a triple-double, a record-breaking 42 triple-doubles in that historic 2016-17 campaign, and eventually the most career triple-doubles in NBA history. But even those numbers do not explain why players across generations stopped to acknowledge his exit. Westbrook's deeper impact was philosophical. He represented total commitment. Sometimes that commitment created brilliance. Sometimes it created mistakes. But there was almost never doubt about whether he cared. His career also offers an important strategic lesson about building teams around extraordinary talent. Talent alone does not guarantee a dynasty. Oklahoma City once possessed Durant, Harden, and Westbrook at the same time. Yet roster decisions, timing, chemistry, and circumstances eventually sent all three down separate roads. For players, there is another lesson. Your role will change. The applause will eventually become quieter. A younger star will take your place. Records will fall. Your body will stop doing everything it once did. The challenge is deciding who you become when that happened. Westbrook eventually accepted smaller roles without allowing them to erase the pride he carried as a competitor. And there is something human in that. Rivalries do not have to become hatred. Criticism does not have to erase respect. Moving on does not mean pretending the past never mattered. Durant, Harden, Westbrook, Shai, and Oklahoma City all continued in different directions, yet their stories remain connected. Russell Westbrook did not leave with the perfect ending. Maybe that is exactly why his career feels real. So where are you watching from? Comment your city or country below. If you believe Westbrook's legacy belongs among the greats, type 1. If you believe the lack of a championship changes how history should judge him, type 2. And if this era of NBA basketball meant something to you, like the video. Share it with another basketball fan, and subscribe to the channel, because legends eventually retire, but the arguments they leave behind never really do.